Hey guys, and welcome to Comics and Chill, and today we are looking at one of my all-time favourite comics, Deathblow and Wolverine, with story and art breakdowns by Aron Wiesenfeld, finishes by Richard Bennett, and colours by Monica Bennett. I got onto this series way after it was originally published. Issue 1 came out September 96, and issue 2 February 1997, and I picked it up in the UK equivalent of the dollar bin or the quarter bin or whatever you want to call it. I picked up issue 1 for 50 pence, and I didn't find issue 2 for years after that, but it was absolute love at first sight when I read this thing. The artwork and visual storytelling in this comic is absolutely incredible, and it's one that I revisit frequently. The story is actually really simple. It's set in the 1980s in Chinatown, San Francisco. Logan's girlfriend has been kidnapped by some ninjas, and Deathblow comes across Wolverine's path, decides to help him out, and the action and chaos ensues. And even though the story is simple, as I mentioned earlier, the artwork and the fight choreography, and there's a car chase in here, this thing was made with absolute love. For a crossover of two major franchises, the amount of love, care, and I'm sure blood, sweat, and tears that are poured into this thing, you'd swear that the creators owned these characters. It's absolutely next level. And just a quick heads up, if you're a fan of this series or the work of Aron Wiesenfeld, he has very generously agreed to answer a few of my questions about the production of this comic. I'm just awaiting his answers, but there'll be a video hopefully later in the week with that Q&A. In the meantime, let's dig in. So right away you're treated to this amazing double-page spread of San Francisco in 1982. And this image for me, it was love at first sight. That clean line style, the meticulous attention to detail on these buildings all the way to the back row. And the detail doesn't end there. As you can see here, we've got an 8-panel page. It's pretty busy, dense with detail, but it never loses the clarity of the storytelling and action. And I'm just going to point out a layout technique or style that Wiesenfeld is using here, which I like throughout this book. If you look at panel 6, it's borderless. It's just kind of like a white background, but the perspective of the props in the room give us a feeling of the space. And at the time, I'd never seen a comic that looked like this. Later on, I would discover Mobius and Jeff Darrow, who I assumed were influences on this book. But the style of it was completely new to me. It's, it's kind of like that, what do they call it, the French, the sort of Tintin style of comic, is it ligne claire? I'm butchering the French pronunciation of it. It just means clear line. So there's not a lot of spotted blacks in this, like here you can see on her hair, but it's being used as a colour. It's not for shading or anything like that. And that's another element that makes me think that this book was inspired by Euro creators. The colorist, Monica Bennett, she's using a lot of these sort of subdued, desaturated, pale colours that I always associated with Mobius and Darrow and European comics. And this is in the mid-90s, at the height of digital colouring techniques. The comic industry was very excited with those, and, maybe sometimes to a fault, but they really reined things in on this book, and it looks beautiful. Even, like in the 90s or early 2000s as well, you would see like pictures of actual skies being used as backgrounds. You can see here that the same thing has been done with this wallpaper in this old lady's apartment, but it actually works really, really well. And you can even see in the third panel there, they've warped it to sort of match the corner of the room, and it's a nice little subtle touch that they've got in there. And when the ninjas show up, that's when another one of my favourite elements of this book kicks in, which is the amount of wordless storytelling sequences that there are. Wiesenfeld really lets the art and choreography do the talking here, and it doesn't get bogged down in sort of like expositional dialogue or all this sort of stuff. It's absolutely beautiful. And in these action sequences, these pages, they still have quite a high panel count. Like this one is 9 panels, but the eye is led across the page effortlessly. And even though, on this page in particular, and kind of throughout the book, the panels have a sort of more like vertical alignment, it still feels very cinematic. Like reading this book is like watching a great kung fu movie. So I don't want to spoil too much of the story for you. I really recommend picking these books up if you can find them. But I'm going to skip ahead to another favourite sequence of mine from the book. Deathblow has met Wolverine here, and he decides to help him out with his little ninja situation that he's got going on. Look at that third panel. That's absolutely amazing. I love that with this book throughout, like, even the background characters, there's like great action and acting going on back there, where you could skimp on the detail. It says Wiesenfeld wrote and did the breakdowns on this, but I would love to see the artwork that he was handing over to Richard Bennett. I mean, the creative team on this book, they'd worked together before, particularly on an image series from the mid-90s called Brass. But I'd never seen any work that looked like this, in this style from the creators. I don't think I'd seen any before or since. So I've done a quick image search and I've been able to find some artwork from the series, some original art from comicartfans.com. I mean, it's saying penciler Wiesenfeld, inker Bennett. I'd imagine the pencil's been done real tight, so it's weird it's got that breakdown credit, but it looks like this might have been lightboxed as well. This is so clean. Yeah, I would love to see these in their sort of penciled stage. I mean, look at that. Seeing that clean line style without the colours, it still reads beautifully. Look at the building behind Deathblow. That's insane. The amount of accuracy, all that brickwork, the details on it. Damn. Anyway, back to that sequence I was talking about before getting sucked down that original art rabbit hole. Here you can see Deathblow saving Wolverine from the ninjas. I'd imagine most creators avoid putting car chases into their comics, or maybe cars in general, because they're so fiddly and hard to draw, but the creators really went out of their way to choreograph this one, and it is absolutely brilliant. I mean, the amount of energy and direction that Wiesenfeld is able to get out of this, this solid object, the car. I've not seen it done this well in any other comic. If you can think of other comics with great car chases, please let me know, because I'm always on the lookout for great examples of, moving vehicles in comic books, how other people handle them. And I love that top left panel there. I mean, the car's flying through the city. Doesn't make sense. I don't care. I mean, it looks so good. And this, again, another panel dense page. What are we looking at? 1, 2, 3. We got 10 panels here. Looks like it's laid out over a sort of, 16 panel grid, like Dark Knight style. So everything we've looked at so far is just from issue 1. I've jumped ahead to issue 2 about halfway through just to show off some of the great art they've got there. Look at that. That top panel is like extremely Darrow-esque to me, but there's just so much great, again, wordless storytelling, fight choreography, gunplay choreography in this comic, and it is an absolute joy to read. But that's about all I got to say about the series. I know I've gushed a lot about it, and I've probably repeated myself a ton, but I revisit this thing frequently, especially to reference character movement, background elements and things like that, how to handle balancing those. And as I mentioned up front of the video, Aron Wiesenfeld has very generously agreed to answer some of my questions about the production of the series. I'm awaiting on the answers. Hopefully by the end of the week I will have that video up of that Q&A. He hasn't worked in comics for quite some time. He left doing interiors, I think, around the year 2000. He went off to switch his career path up to pursue fine art. Yeah, with him being out of the comics making game for so long, I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about this series all these years later. But let me know in the comments if you remember this series when it came out, if you picked it up, or if you remember any of the other Wildstorm X-Men crossovers. I'm hoping to do videos covering some of those soon. And thanks for watching today's video. Like, follow and subscribe if you haven't already. Tell a friend, spread the word. Follow us on social media, and have a great day. I'll be back soon. Damn traffic outside my house. It's driving me nuts. I live in Tokyo, but I thought it was it's like a quieter area. It's like a suburb. But for some reason, the amount of souped up cars and motorbikes that are in this area, combined with the fact that they're building a new apartment complex across the street from me, all the slamming and banging from that. I don't know if it's going to come across in the recording, but it is driving me nuts today.